sitting with a bowl of popcorn on top of that cowboy and Indian sofa that should have been tossed away years ago, but just stayed. That's what I really loved about their place, was this feeling of permanence that surrounded everything there. That things not only wouldn't change, but absolutely couldn't. Or at least we thought. It was towards the end of that summer, maybe a week before we were supposed to go back home. Maddie and I went with Grandma into town to pick up some things at the grocery store. We were gone maybe an hour. As the car turned onto the gravel driveway, I could barely see a couple of men in the yard farther off. One of them was holding something in his hand, but I couldn't tell what it was from the car. We parked the car in the garage and got out and began to grab grocery bags, trying to load as many as we could to show Grandma that we were men. "Boys, only carry as much as you can," she sternly said. "Don't drop anything." "Okay, Grammy." We took off, each carrying one hefty bag, and started to make our way up the steps to the front door. Grandma walked behind us, opening the door, and held it open for us. We walked in and set the bags on the kitchen table. Tempted to take off our shoes, she stopped us in her tracks. "What are you boys doing? There's still more bags in the car." We huffed and puffed for a minute, pulling our shoes back on. We marched outside with a purpose. As I approached the garage, I stopped. Watching the men with Grandpa by the cherry tree, my brother stopped next to me. We were unsure about what they were doing. I saw one man on his knees with a tape measure and pencil, and he was making marks on the bark. I blankly stared at him, trying to figure out what he was doing to my tree. I couldn't understand. I didn't know enough about trees, and Grandpa was there. I knew he wouldn't let them hurt our tree. After a few moments, I saw one grab a hold of something. The same thing I saw before, but this time I was closer. I knew what it was. It was an axe, shimmering in the summer glow. I was hypnotized for a moment, allowing it to sparkle all the way to my eyeball, and with every glint I could see the blood dripping from the tree like water from a spout. I became paralyzed, and I couldn't move, and though I felt as if I was running like lightning, I could sense this cord in me break open, spilling out down to the very extraneous polars of my toes, and the coldness that followed. But suddenly I was able to muster some energy left, and I took off toward the tree, making great strides, but they were very far away. I thought I was screaming, but still, I'm unsure if I actually was, or if it was just echoing inside my head. Either way, it had no effect, because I soon saw the glisten of the blade being raised high above his head. It looked like it was motionless up there, frozen. But so was I. I heard the pounding of its heart as fully as I could feel mine, hurting, crunching, pulsating. And then suddenly, I couldn't take it anymore. The blade fell into the bottom of that bright, healthy trunk, deep incisions into it, ripping apart the neat bark, fragments and shards spraying across the grass. And I thought I saw a tear. But I might have been delirious, I'm not sure. A second later, the tree fell. That gallant being, the silent guardian that would stand watch over the grounds when we were fast asleep, was no more. A moment later, Grandma and Maddie joined me as the tree fell down to its low height. We all held each other for a moment. She looked over at me. A single tear glistened down She took her thumb and wiped it off. "What's wrong, honey?" she asked, trying to pick out one emotion in a sea of crashing feelings was just too much. But I had to answer her. She was staring at me, and so was Maddie, and so I took a breath and I said very slowly, "That was our tree." Calmly. "I know, honey, but we'll get a new one," she replies. "This one is sick." She squeezed my shoulder. Unable to think of what to say, even Maddie was a little sad. A new one? I had no way of comprehending that. I couldn't believe that just happened. They couldn't have waited 2 weeks until we were gone? What's wrong? Could I even explain to her what that cherry tree was? That it was absolutely everything to me, and now it's just a burn pile in the yard. She wanted to ask me more questions, but I couldn't answer any. I wasn't the same after the tree was gone. Those last couple of weeks, I basically sat in the room staring off at the stub in the yard. I wanted to go home. There was nothing for me here anymore. We were supposed to have 2 more weeks out there, but I called Mom, told her that I wanted to be picked up early. She asked me why, and I told her I couldn't talk about it. She said she could do a couple of days earlier, but that was all. When they finally came and got us, she asked Grandma about my mood change. Grandma said she didn't know why. I just out of the blue became adamant about going home. But she knew. And sometimes when I see her now, there are glimpses of that secret hidden in her eyes. She had a good poker face. Mom couldn't figure it out, and Maddie couldn't either. He never would have thought to leave their house, especially over a tree. But she never asked me again, and it died there, as far as they were concerned. School was about to begin, and I was determined to throw myself in whatever activities would keep me distracted, and that worked because I hardly thought about that tree, or their cottage home nestled among the swallowing clouds and long, winding, narrow roads that would drone on forever, as far as the eye can see, and it soon disappeared into mystery and forgotten tale. But I never went back to that place. I was very serious and stubborn. Mom never tried to push me further, but I saw them for holidays and get-togethers. Grandpa and Maddie never really understood and thought it was all in my mind, and eventually I would get over it. So months came and went, eventually turning into years. I did forget, as life leads you in so many different ways. I moved away from home, somewhere completely different, and let that memory slowly fade to that forest floor of my mind, barely twinkling in the dim chandelier. It's been 15 years since the day at the cusp of summer, but I remember it all as if it happened yesterday. I forget the events, but also they live inside of me. Usually it never crosses my mind, but when it does, it's like a cancer, eating me apart and regurgitating my memories all over my apartment floor. I live alone now, which is what I wanted. It's nice. I have a small studio at the base of Griffith Park in LA. It's small, but I enjoy it because I don't have that much to look after. It's easier when one doesn't have that much responsibility. It's easier to manage. I have a car also. It's a little Asian thing that gets me around just fine. I have a job, but I couldn't care less about it. Some days I think this has just helped me to live, while other days it just keeps me from writing. I usually keep to myself most of the time, with a small group of friends that I see from time to time, and I keep in touch with family, but I don't go home that often. I woke up early this morning. Early for living in LA. I was up on my way about 9:30, so I could be at the cafe by 10. It was a beautiful morning. The sky was mostly clear with a couple of morphing clouds overhead, a light breeze that brushed my cheeks and filled my hair. It was an optimal time to write, so I walked inside the cafe and got my usual double espresso, and walked out to the seafoam green table with matching chair and set up for a long, productive session. I find it's always so difficult to begin, and I'm extremely jealous of writers who don't have that problem. Not just the beginning, but the start of every session seems like pulling teeth. But I always seem to push forward, so I begin to read over what I did yesterday, staring at it and trying to find that spurt of inspiration to move ahead. but it's not coming yet. As I sip on the double espresso, which is so good, and I think they switched the beans, my phone starts to ring in my pocket. I pull it out and press talk. Yep. This is Matthew, your brother, says in some cheesy, futuristic voice. You weirdo. What's up? Laugh. Not much. Just bought a ticket home for the holidays. Did you buy yours yet? Maybe we can get in at the same time. I didn't, I'm not sure if I'm going to go home right now, I sheepishly say. You always say that every year. That's not true. I went back, stumbling on my words. Exactly. You can't even remember the last time. It's been 3 years since you've been back. Every year, Mom gets so sad when you don't come. It wears on her. I know she does. I'm not sure what you want from me here. There's silence. He's trying to figure out what to say. I know what's coming after. I begin to brace myself. Why do you always do this shit? It's always like this with you. We come to LA and everything's great. We have fun and all. But as soon as we bring up coming back home, you just become so stubborn and difficult. Yeah, I say, unable to come up with anything better. Yeah, what? Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. So you're not going to change your mind? He pointedly asked me. No. He doesn't say anything, but I can hear noises happen in his mouth. He is working himself over something that he knows I won't change my mind about. But I know that I need to calm him down. Tell you what, I will think about it, okay? I'm on a deadline with this first draft. If I can make some major headway before the 1st of November, I might be able to swing it, but I'm not making any promises. That's all I ask, just to think about it. Righty. I'm actually about to write, so I guess I'll let you go. Hoping to dish him. Yeah, I get you, Mr. Writer Man. Oh, by the way, congrats on the book. Thanks, man. Well, I don't want to keep you. Oh, also, hope your birthday went well. Yes, it did. Talk to you later. And I quickly hang up the phone, throwing it on the table. I take another sip from the espresso, letting the now lukewarm liquid course down my throat, filling me with its bitter, grainy goodness. I go back to the task at hand, writing, tapping on the table. I can't forget the annoying conversation I just had with Maddie. He knows what buttons to press to get me all out of sorts and keep me distracted. So I don't care to go home. It's all the same, and it becomes so awkward way too fast. I enjoy it for a day or two, and then I feel trapped and just want to be anywhere but there. I know he means well and all, but I just can't do it. Maybe next year or the year after that, when I'm not so busy with this novel. I sit there staring at the screen, drifting off into my head, and thinking about home and the past. My thoughts go to that far-gone day at the cottage, and I try to push it out of my mind. I remember all the events, as they might happen in a movie. Very short bits, violent in and leave the same, with the residual that resides in my core, the freshly cut stump in the middle of the path, shown during the afternoon glow of summer's rays. Us that day, surrounded in the awe and sadness, we knew that things had changed, that can't be undone, and that's what my brother doesn't really understand. He always took everything like a cool breeze, letting it blow by him and moving on to the next thing, while I take a sting like that to my core, letting it fill me up, bound tightly in memories and holding it dear. So no, I cannot forget it. And home brings all that pain back to me. And while I cannot forget it, I wish to keep it at bay and choose not to look at it. The one thing about that day that nobody seems to understand was what that cherry tree really was. My grandmother asked me, "What's wrong, honey?" And I couldn't properly answer. I didn't have the strength at the time. The tree was all that was beautiful and innocent in this world to me then. It was how I saw my grandmother, and through that tree I saw true glimpses of a person loving something unconditionally. And when that tree died, it seemed like love passed and was forgotten in the fire of time. I couldn't even properly explain it now, why